Okay. Hey y'all, and welcome to the very first episode of The Joy of 3D Art. I'm Sir Pinkbeard, and today we're going to be making this lovely, happy little double-sided murder axe. It's going to be fantastic. Now, since this is the first episode, let me go ahead and set some expectations for the series overall. Now, in my mind, The Joy of 3D Art is a bi-weekly live stream where we as a community will come together and work on some model or group of models together and then share our final creations in the Discord, for which you can find a link in the description. Now, the real emphasis here is to have fun and enjoy creating a 3D model and share, like I said, our final creations. But since this is live, if you have any questions whatsoever, you can let me know in the chat, and I will do my best to help you guys out as we go through and create these. And on a future note, while this is bi-weekly and I do have most of these planned, if you have any ideas for some future episodes, let me know in the comments below and I'll see what I can do. So with that, everything's done. So let's get started. Hey y'all, I can see you here. Today, like I said, we're going to be making this little axe, and we're going to be hand painting everything. We'll use a couple of different modifiers to get started, but we can see that we really have 4 objects here. We have the shaft of the axe head, and the wraps around the handle, which will create just to give some realism. So those are the 4 objects that we're going to create. Let me go ahead and just move all of these over to the side, and we'll get started with a new one. Also, I guess I should have done this before we got started, but let's turn on screencast keys here, just so you guys can see and follow along with me if you feel the need, or if you're looking back and watching this again, you can follow along with what keys I'm pressing. So, Shift A, and let's go ahead and add in a cylinder. Now, I'm going to move the operator panel over here so you guys can see it, because I'm in the bottom left-hand corner. Let's go ahead and change some of these settings, though. So let's set the vertex count to 16. And then let's drop that radius down to, I don't know, 0.2? Nah, that's too big. How about 0.1? Yeah, I think that's good. We could even take it lower than that if we wanted to. So let's actually, I'm going to take that a little lower. Let's do 0.07 is what I'm going to do. You can set the scale that you want, but I think that's probably going to be good. And then we'll just leave the depth of our cylinder at 2. So now we can jump over to the modeling workspace. Hit 1 on our keyboard to look at it from the front, and we can see that it's still 2 Blender units tall. So to fix this, let's just hit G and then Z and then 1. And we'll move the whole thing up there. And what you can see is this is going to allow us for this to be the shaft of our axe. I guess that's what you would call it, shaft and handle. And then we can add the pommel and top pieces to the head of the axe as we need. But we need to increase the top here just a little bit. So let's go ahead and take this up maybe 1 more. Maybe 1.5? No, that's too big. How about 1.1? No. Let's just do 0.5. There we go. And that'll take us to roughly to the base here. And then we'll do some stuff to get the extra little piece that goes into the axe head. Excuse me. Hope everyone's having a great Saturday morning. But yeah, let's get going here. I'm just going to take a minute here and rename the object over in the properties panel, or over in the outliner. I think this will help things stay really, really unique when we're creating a bunch of our objects, especially since I've already done some of these. So let me just rename this. I would encourage you also to name all of the objects that you create, so that way if you're exporting these for another program, or if you're trying to find them in a scene, they're much easier to find. Alright, so I've just gone ahead and called it axe handle, and then we want to, let's get started by creating the pommel here. So we'll select this bottom face and hit numpad period, which will allow us to zoom in here, and then we're going to hit E to extrude. Now after we've extruded, let's go ahead and hit S to scale, and then type in 1.2 to bring us out there. Now we can see that the faces are on top of each other, which is noticeable by the highlighted face and then some of these faces that we can't see. So let's go ahead and extrude this down just a little bit here. And let's look at this from the front, and I'm going to pull up the operator panel and just kind of adjust this to what I think it should be. Maybe 1.5 is good. Maybe that's too big. So let's take this down to 0.1. And there we go. And that'll be basically the size of our pommel here. And then just to get the final bottom piece, we will inset just a bit, about right there, and then extrude out again, just going down a little bit further. Now, we do need to do one more thing here, and that is kind of pull this pommel out a bit more, because right now it doesn't look like it's gonna wrap on there. So let's do this. We're gonna go ahead and add a control in right here. And then I'm gonna just scale this edge out just a bit. Something like that, I think. All right, then I'll grab this inset face here and just hit E and we'll extrude up. And there we go. Now, if we look on the inside, we can see we do have some extra vertices here. So let's just grab on this inside and hit X and then dissolve edges. And now this is all just connected right up here. And so now what it looks like is it looks like there's like a wooden shaft and it's kind of going into a cuff, and then the pommel's kind of coming out a little bit from that, and then it's going to continue down. And then this is a bit too high, so let's move this back down to right about there, which should give us roughly the same height as from the bottom. And there we go. All right, so we have our pommel completed. Any questions so far on what we've done? Are you having trouble following along? Do you need me to go slower? Let me know in the chat. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and save my work. Make sure you guys do as well. It'll help with the overall creation process. Abdelkader, hello, welcome to the stream. How are you doing today? Okay, for the next part, we just want to go ahead and mark in here where this little hilt, I guess it's not a hilt, it's the guard for the hand is going to go. So we'll just Control R, which will allow us to loop cut, left click, and then right click to leave it in place. And then that way this will be directly in the center here. And then from there, what we want to do is come over to our tools on the left where we have the loop cut tool. And we want to change, click and hold to change that tool to the offset edge loop. Now, once you have the offset edge loop, all you have to do is right click and drag to drag out some additional edges from that median point there. And then we will bring up the operator panel with F9. And then this will let us just kind of adjust some things. So I want these to be evenly dispersed on both sides. And then we're going to have to move this way down. And so the closer we get to, or the closer we get to -1, the closer we'll get to the original place here. And I think that's probably fine. Let's just do 0.9 even. Or -0.9 even. All right, and I think that'll give us a decent bit here for this. And then what we want to do, I just accidentally clicked and added in some extra edge loops. Just Control Z that, and you'll be fine. All right, then I'm going to hit W, go back to my select tool so I don't accidentally do any more offsetting of edge loops. And we're just going to do GG. So if you hit GG, this will activate edge slide and then drag this down. Now the reason I'm dragging this down is ultimately so that I can scale this out, which will create for us that bottom section of our guard. And then we'll do the same thing up at the top here. So Control R, add in an extra edge loop, and then just take it all the way up to the top, and then S to scale it out. All right, and we have the very basics of our guard created. Maybe it's a little tall, maybe it's a little long, so we can shrink that up, I think, by just grabbing this bottom face here and hitting G and Z to lock it to the Z axis. And there we go. We have a much more natural looking guard. It kind of fits with the overall feel. Maybe it's also a little too far scaled out. So let's go ahead and grab both of these edges right here. And for this part, we definitely want to make sure that our pivot point is not on median. We want to set our pivot point to the individual origin. Once we do that, we can hit scale, and it will scale each of those edge loops individually. Instead, because if we did the active median point and we scaled it down, you can see they're actually getting closer together, which is not what we wanted. So make sure you've got your transform pivot point set to individual origins, and then scale it down. All right, and that said, you know what? I kind of want to bevel this bottom edge here because I don't like the straight sharpness, and if you were actually wielding this hammer, you probably wouldn't like the straight sharpness either. So let's go ahead and hit Control B, which will activate the bevel, and kind of do just like that, I think. I think that'll be just fine for the bevel. And we could bevel the top as well, but I don't think the top really needs a bevel so much as the hand needs the bevel. Nesberg, welcome to the stream. How you doing today on this fine Saturday morning? So now that our handle is done, let's actually work on this top piece here. And if we just jump back over into the layout workspace, what we can actually see is this handle goes all the way through the top of the axe head. So we're just going to create the base here for a second, then we'll jump over to the axe head, and then we'll finish out the top once we've got the axe head's sizing done correctly. So select the axe handle that we still have creating, and let's go back over here. And just like with the base pommel, we're going to go ahead and hit E to extrude, and then scale, and then type in 1.2 just to get the very base here. And then we'll just move it up a little bit, say 0.04, I think. If we take a look at that from the property panel, yeah, we can see 0.04. I think that's fine. And then we're going to do the same steps. So extrude with E, scale 1.2, and then extrude up 0.0. Up. 0.04. Okay, and there we go. And that's going to give us the base here, and the axe head is now going to sit on top of this. So it doesn't necessarily mean that your axe head has to match exactly what mine does, but let's start by creating, let's start creating that axe head. So with this top face selected, go ahead and hit Shift S. This brings up our snapping menu. And with our snapping menu, we want to move the cursor to the selected face here. So with this cursor selected, what we're going to be able to do is add in the cube that will serve as the axe head. But we're not going to add it in on the axe handle because we're going to use a mirror modifier to make sure that we can do the left and the right at the same time. So let's go ahead and hit Tab to leave edit mode and return to object mode. And from there, Shift A and add in a cube. Now, we definitely want to hit F9 again, bring up the operator panel and shrink this cube back down until it's pretty much just big enough to sit around the base that we created there. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and also just move it up a bit, just like a tiny, tiny bit to right about there, I think. And then we'll right click and we're going to set the origin to the 3D cursor because now the origin, or now the axe head is like moved out of position and we want the 3D origin to be kind of on top of the handle there. All right, and now let's just add in a mirror modifier. and we'll be able to mirror across the x-axis here. And now this is kind of the important part. The question is, do you want to work on the right or do you want to work on the left? Because if you want to work on the right, what we want to do is turn off X-ray, come up to the top, turn that off, and grab the left-hand side because we want to work on the right. Turn on clipping for our mirror modifier, and then hit G and X, and then pull it over and lock it to the X-axis center line there. And then we'll just hit X and delete that face because it's not going to be seen going forward. And then we're just going to pull this up a bit. Take a look at this from the front. We just kind of want to get the axe head to the proper height. I think maybe something like that is going to be good. And we don't necessarily need it to go out any further. But what we can do here... Cigar, welcome to the stream. How are you doing today? What we can do here is hit A to select everything, and then scale. Now, at this point, what we want to do is hit Shift Z, so that way we can scale it on the X and the Y, but not change the height at all. And that's going to allow the axe head, like centerpiece, to be a little bit thicker than the handle that where it's going to go on, and that's going to add to the realism here. Okay. And then from here, we're going to inset this face and create the actual blade of the axe. So hit I to inset or use the inset tool. And just kind of take it in. I think maybe that width will be fine for starting this out, especially because we're going to be hand painting. And when you're hand painting your models, it helps to have models that are a little bit blockier, or at least for weapons, because it helps kind of give that, that depth to your object. So I'm okay with that block there. We will proportional edit and shrink it down once the blade is actually formed. All right, once again, let's look at this from the front here, and it will help if you kind of draw out your desire for the shape of your axe head. So go ahead and grab the annotate brush here and just kind of quickly draw out the design that you're thinking of, and I'm thinking something like this. Something like that. It doesn't have to match exactly, but it does help if you have some kind of reference for as we're extruding here, so that way you can get your, you know, proper shape in for the axe head. And it doesn't matter what shape you go with, but I do think that this is probably the best way to do that, regardless of what you're working on. So with that said, we can hit W, grab that select tool again, and then we're just going to extrude a bunch of times and scale on the Z axis, so that way we can match this shape. So we'll hit E to extrude, maybe take it to right there because it starts to scale out a little bit, and then S to scale it, and Z to scale it on that Z axis, and only that Z axis. And now we can see it's still just as wide as it was before, but now it's just a little bit taller. And once again, extrude, and then scale on the Z axis. And we're going to scale just a little bit more than the top, and then hit G and Z and kind of bring it down to match that bottom line a little bit better. All right, and then one more. And scale this on the Z axis. And something like that will be okay. Now we can add in some more edge loops, and we will add in some more edge loops to get this overall axe head shape. But before we add in some more vertical edge loops, let's go ahead and add in 3 horizontal edge loops, which will allow us to actually pull out the blade shape and match our drawing. So hit Control R and then scroll up until you get the 3 edge loops here. I'll just do that again for those of you following along. So we'll hit Control R and then scroll up twice to get the 3 edge loops, left click to confirm, and then right click to leave in place. Now this is kind of the most fun part for me because it's not general modeling where like we've been using the mouse and stuff, and now I'm switching over to the pen tablet that I have just because it's going to allow me to do a little bit more. So switch into X-Ray and grab your pen, and I will answer a question in the chat. So Brownie, hello, welcome to the stream. Hope you're having a good Saturday morning. Will I be covering the texturing part of the axe? Yes, I absolutely will. By the time we finish, I will have shown in this entire video how to create this. You know, your hand painting will be a little bit different than mine, and my hand painting will be a little bit different than the original. But yeah, everything that you see here, I will show you how to create completely by the time we are done. So thanks for asking, and welcome to the stream. All right, let's go back to that modeling workspace and do what I want to do and get this axe shape formed. So hit 1 on the top left of your keyboard to activate our vertex select, and then we're just going to select one vertex here and hit G, and then place it. Now the reason we can do this is that we have X-ray on. If we didn't have X-ray on and we just tried to grab it and then you know, hit G and move it, what you could see is that we're only moving one side. So having X-ray on here is absolutely important. It also helps that you're in front orthographic view, because you'll be able to kind of keep this in line with where it originally was. So let's go ahead and pull this out here. And there we go. And then we're just going to position this bottom piece a little bit better. And maybe we move the top one over a little bit more. And I think we're good on that. So that gets us the base shape. But as we can see from our annotation, it doesn't actually give us a blade. So let's add in a blade here. We can turn off X-ray. And hit Control R once more. And add in the blade edge loop. But we don't want to grab the entire piece. We're not going to turn our entire blade, like the entire axe head, into a blade. We just want this one side here. So select the top edge on the blade part and the bottom edge on the blade part. And I used pick shortest path to do that, which is simply Control and select. From there, let's go back to the front view orthographic and hit G and X, kind of pull this out, and then we'll scale it up just a little bit so that the axe head and blade kind of comes out a little bit more. All right, and then I'm just going to adjust the final blade edges at the top and the bottom to be a little bit more in line with what I want. And then let's go ahead and scale down these faces so that the blade and the axe head itself kind of tapers off towards the edge. So to do that, select every face on the axe head, excuse me. And what we're going to do is turn on proportional editing. Now, proportional editing just allows you, if you're not aware, to you know, affect a handful of faces and then proportionally affect faces that are connected to them. You have the options for connected only or projected from view. We're not going to worry about that, though. We are going to take a smooth you know, projection. So we don't have to change any of the default settings, but just come up to the top, make sure that's turned on, and then we'll hit scale and Y. And then what we want to do is scale this down, but we don't want to affect any of the faces on the base here. And you can kind of see that the faces on the axe head base are scaling with it. So let's scroll up with our wheel until only the faces of the blade are being affected, because we don't want anything to be changed on this middle block here. And I think that's pretty good. All of those faces now seem to be going in a little bit more slanted, and the blade is kind of tapered. So I think I'm kind of happy with that for now. Maybe we'll change it, maybe we won't, who knows. Excuse me again. All right, and then what we want to do is just kind of connect these off. So we'll finish off creating the blade here by selecting both of the vertices at the top and hit J. When you do that, you will be able to, or it'll create that third vertex, and we can actually just kind of move this, turn off proportional editing with O, and then just kind of move this down and in line, and just repeat that on the bottom here. So select both and hit J. And then move it in line. And there we go. and our blade is finished. As far as I'm concerned, I think that's good. But I do want to adjust some things on the axe head where it connects. I want a beveled edge here. So what we're going to do is we're going to select all of the sides here, and then I'm just going to select the edges on the top and the bottom. So Alt select this ring of faces going around the axe head, and then select all of the corner edges there. And then Control B again to kind of bevel this out. And I think that's good, but let's also drop that segments down because I kind of like it with just the one segment. But there's a lot that you can do here. So if we wanted 2 segments and we wanted it to be more square, we could do that. We could take it to where it's kind of inward if you want to. Play around with the setting, get the kind of feel that you're looking for. I really only want 1 segment, so it doesn't really matter to me. But I do want the width to be a little different because I didn't like how I ended it. I think maybe that's probably good as far as the bevel. So if you're trying to follow along and match me exactly, we are going to, I mean, I took it to 0.009 or 0.01 essentially. What about the wrapping part of the handle? Don't worry, we'll get there. We will get there, I promise. Okay, so the blade is good, the axe head is good, but let's go back to the handle here. Just go into X-ray, make sure we have this top face selected, and then hit G and Z to pull this all the way up through to the top. Now we can get out of X-ray, and this is going to just make it appear that everything, I mean, it is going through, but it's just going to make it appear that the axe head is actually stuck onto the handle in some way. And then we can inset this, and roughly there, because no one's really going to match the sizes, and we'll just extrude it up a little bit. And now we can continue the wooden part of the handle through this metal part of the axe head. And if we think that's a little too large, and I think it is a little too large, we can go ahead and just hit 3 to select faces. And then we're going to go ahead and just scale this whole section down by hitting S to scale and Shift Z to prevent it from scaling on that Z axis, and then just kind of pulling it closer towards the center. And I think that looks a lot better. But we'll do the same thing down here. I think that'll give it a much nicer look, and then maybe take these faces up a bit. There we go. Okay, so our handle is practically done. We do need to do the wraps, but that's going to be its own object. And we need to add in some detail to the axe head. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to select the axe head. Actually, hit A to select all of the objects for you, or just shift select both, and then right click and shade smooth. Now we do this because we only have 16 edges going around our cylinder, and we have an axe blade and it's kind of going in, so we want these faces to kind of seem like they're all solid and not just pieced together with geometry. But we can see that when we smooth it all, we get some really weird shading on the faces. So to fix that shading, come over to the vertex groups, or the object data properties, which is this upside down triangle over here on the properties panel, and then go to normals and check auto smoothing. Now you can only do these one at a time, but we've noticed with the axe head, we've actually lost the edge of the blade, the sharpened edge, so we can't see that any longer. Don't worry, we'll fix that. And then do that same process for the axe handle. So make sure it's selected, come over to normals and check auto smoothing, and that's going to make it look a lot nicer and appear more rounded off than we have the actual edges for. Okay, and then back into here. So what we need to do is select these faces, or sorry, select these edges that denote the like the sharpened blade itself, right click, and what we want to do is mark sharp. And when we do that, now we can absolutely see the edge of the blade distinguished from the rest of the blade. And this is going to be something that's really important, because when you're doing hand painting, it kind of helps to have a little bit more blocky stuff and then highlight that with texture. So make sure that you are marking that as sharp. It'll give a real appearance of an actual blade for this hand painted model. Cigar, enjoy your dinner. We'll still be here probably texturing by the time you get back. Okay, so the last little piece for this blade here is really to add in some detail as far as like what we can see over here, where maybe the axe has been used and you've got some chips out of the blade and they're missing. You don't really notice it too much when you're dealing with hand-painted models, like if you're looking at someone else's, but you notice them when they're not there because the hand-painted model looks wrong to some degree. And since we're not doing any normals on this, we definitely need to add in this extra geometry. So we're going to just select all three of these edges right here and right-click and subdivide, which will give us this nice little edge loop kind of created right in there. But let me do that again, just so I can get the operator panel here. So we will subdivide, and then bring up the operator panel for subdivide, and I don't want it to create n-gons, so I'm going to uncheck this create n-gons here, which you can see adds in 2 extra edges and creates a tri-face or 3 tri-faces where there was once an n-gon. It does it on both sides, which is nice. Okay, and from there, what we want to do is just add in some cuts. So grab the knife tool over here, or you can hit K, and we'll just cut in and hit enter to confirm a little chip. And if we switch to vertex select, maybe this will make it a little easier. I'm going to use the hotkey because it brings up this receptacle. And we'll hit enter, and there we go. And we have our first chip in place. And so all we have to do to get the chip is move this in until the faces change. And we can see that that is what the chip is going to look like. If we want to mark these as sharp, we can totally do that. See what that looks like. That does look a little nicer. So we'll keep those, mark those as sharp. And because we're using a mirror modifier, we can see that same chip over on the left-hand side. If you don't want that, you can apply your mirror modifier and then add in your detail. But I'm actually really okay with the chips being in place on both the left and the right. However, from the original model, you can see that there are 3 chips here. I don't think I'm going to do that. I think for this one, we'll just do 2. But you can add in a third one, or you can add in, only one of these if you want to. But we'll try just 2 on this one and make the second chip a little bit bigger and see how that goes. So once again, select all of those edges and just right-click and subdivide. And because we unchecked the create n-gons before, it's no longer going to do that. But if you want it to create n-gons, just, pull up your operator panel and there you go. All right, and we'll just make this chip a little bit bigger, make it more of a chunk than a chip. And then we'll grab these edges by holding loop select, which I don't know why it didn't select that one, but then just mark that as sharp. Well, I don't like the 2, so let's go ahead and just move this entire selection up a little bit, and we'll add in 1 more. So I'm going to hit GG, slide these. Whoops, I don't want to do all of that. I just want to take these 2 here, hit GG, and slide this up a little bit. we go. And then we'll just add in another chip down here, just because I think this will really help complete it. So there we go. All right, yeah, that's definitely better. Is definitely better. I don't know why I didn't like the 2, but if you liked the 2, that's totally fine. Welcome to the stream, Ani. I'm just gonna call you Ani because I'm gonna mess up your full name if I mess that up. If I try to pronounce it. So waiting for me to complete the character creation course. I will get back to that. There's only a few more videos, so we'll make sure to finish that out. But I'm glad you're enjoying that character course. And thanks for subscribing, Stefan. Really appreciate that. Glad you're enjoying the stream. Okay, so that's the axe head. It's basically complete as far as everything we need to worry about. We've got the detail in there. We have the shaded smooth. We've got some beveling. It's a, you know, everything is good. So the last part that we need to worry about is the wrapping for the handle. This one's a pretty easy model to just model. So let's go ahead, select the handle here, and Shift S and cursor to selected. Now at this point, what we're going to want to do is hit Shift A and add in a circle. Now, with the circle added, we want to also drop this thing down to 16 vertices. And then we can bring that radius way in until basically it connects to, you know, the bottom. But we need to move this up just a little bit because obviously we are, you know, having the pommel there. And so we would kind of want the pommel to go over top of the wrapping just to kind of hold it in place. So let's go ahead, move this up a bit. So we'll hit G and Z to move it up just a little bit. Go into edit mode and scale it down once again. And then we'll move it down just a little bit. Actually, you know what? Let's just move it down in object mode just a little bit until basically it is touching the base of the pommel. If it's not perfect, that is more than fine. But you want it close enough so that way there's not any disconnect in the model when people are looking at it. Kartik, welcome to the stream. Hope you're having a good day. Wang, thanks for sharing your knowledge. Thanks for being here. Hope you're following along or at least enjoying the stream and the quiet folk music. This is a bi-weekly live stream that I'm doing, starting now, and just creating a bunch of things. So if you have any objects that you'd like to see created in a live stream, let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, we'll just do the objects that I've got planned. And 97 Luna, do I use a tablet for modeling? Yes, I do. I have a nice 23-inch Huion tablet. It's pretty awesome. I use it for sculpting and modeling, but before I had this, I absolutely just used a mouse and keyboard. So I just find that using the pen tablet makes modeling a little bit more intuitive overall, because I don't have to like use a mouse and try to click on where I want. I can just, you know, go there. Okay, so with the circle created and placed, we want to select the axe handle and just hide it with H. So that way we can focus on the circle here. Let's look at this from the top. So hit numpad 7, and we can see that this is also in the way. So let's go ahead and hide the axe handle as well. And then with that circle selected, we want to go into edit mode, and we want to select the corners of the circle, just like that, and hit X and delete them. And from there, we want to go around and select the outside edges of those and hit E. And then make sure that our pivot point is set back to the median. We want to make sure that it's like not scaling on its individual. Sorry, I got something caught in my throat. There we go. That's better. How long have I been using Blender? I have been using Blender on and off for 6 years now. Gosh, I'm old. Sorry. But yeah, roughly 5 or 6 years. I used to teach it in a classroom setting, but you know, now I just make tutorials online or live stream the content or starting to work on animations and stuff. So anyways, with these vertices selected, let's just hit S and scale them closer together. Now what this is going to do is allow our modifier to then create all of the geometry that we need for the wrap. So this is where it's really, really cool. So let's bring back the axe head and the axe handle and take a minute and name these objects. And this is going to be wraps 1. Or, you know what, we'll do wraps L. And we'll make them wrap to the left. Okay, and then numpad period to find that object and focus on it. And then what we want to do, zoom out just a little bit so that we can see it, and come over to the modifiers tab. Now the modifier we're going to use that's going to do all of the work for us is the screw modifier. So we'll add in the screw modifier here, and we want to drop this angle down to, I believe, -50, which will make it go to the left, and we want it to screw, oh, I don't know, let's do 0.05. Sorry. Yeah, I typed in the wrong one there. 0.05. There we go. And we can just increase the iterations until it's wrapped all the way around our handle. And so we can see that we've got 1, and it's pretty good, but we can play around with the angle. And so I think maybe having an angle of negative, I don't know, -30 might work better. So let's try that. And then we're going to hit A, change these back to individual origins here. And I'm just going to thin out the wraps because I think they're a little too fat. Okay, and there we go. That's pretty good. And the last thing we want to do, now that we've got the screw modifier in place, is scale the whole object out. So I'm going to change back to the median point here and just scale these out until they're actually really raised out of the objects themselves. Okay, and there we go. We've got the left wrap. If we're looking at that from the front, though, it does kind of go down into the pommel, so maybe we'll need to increase the size of the pommel. I didn't want to make it too big because when you're using an axe, you don't really want the axe to be evenly weighted like you would a sword. You want all of that force to go into the cutting part for the axe. So we'll go ahead and save our work. Thank you, BlenderBot. And then I'm just going to move this down just a little bit, and then we'll, increase the pommel to encase these wraps. But to create the next one, just hit Shift D with that wrap selected, and we can change the name. This is going to be wraps R. And instead of -30, we'll just put 30. And now we can see they interact. But because they're the same size, we do have, a bit of an issue with that. So pick one, either the left or the right, and just hit Tab, go into edit mode, and scale it out just a bit until one is larger than the other. And that's going to make the wraps actually look like they intersect. Now, because all those are vertices, we're not going to be able to actually texture that, so we'll have to create a new material for that, but we'll get there in the end. Just a little prep work for what's to come, or just to prepare you for what's to come. All right, and then like I said, the last step, we want to just increase the size of the pommel here. So we're going to grab this face right here, this face loop, with Alt Select, and then we'll hit Control and Numpad plus to get all of the vertices connected for the pommel, and then just scale. Oh, I guess we don't want this very top one here. So Shift Alt Select again, and then Control Alt Select, Shift Control Alt Select to grab those final vertices there. And then we'll scale and hit Shift Z and just scale the pommel out until the wrapping is encased by the pommel. And we don't have any issues with the wraps up here at the top, obviously, because they just go into the guard, and so it's fine. And with that, our axe is completely modeled. So at this point, we're going to go into UV editing and then texturing. Any questions on how we got here from the 10 of you currently watching? Welcome back, Cigar. How was your dinner? All right, with no questions coming in, the modeling is finished, so let's get on to the UV editing. Now we have essentially two objects here, and then we have the wraps. The wraps we're not going to be able to UV edit simply because they are like a single vertice. They're not anything that can be unwrapped. It's just a single edge created multiple times. So we're just going to have to put a material on that. So we can do that real quick. We'll just grab the first wrap and go to the material tab and add a new material. And we'll call this wraps. Wraps matte. And then we can just pick a base color. Now I like the, like a deep red kind of leather, I think would probably be nice. Maybe something like that. And if we switch over to the material preview, viewport shading material preview, then we can kind of see how this looks. And then just grab the other wraps and we can select the wraps matte from the bottom there. Now, if you don't like that and you want to play around with it, the cool thing about this is we have the angle that can be adjusted pretty easily for both of them. And that way they won't kind of like be perfect or whatever, but there we go. So wraps are done, wraps are modeled. We can see that they come off the thing, so pretty good. And we didn't actually have to do much for it. So now let's grab the axe handle and go over to UV editing. Now you can see that I already have the texture map from the previous one up, so we're just going to go ahead and close that so we don't have to worry about seeing it. Numpad period to focus in on the axe that we're actually working on. And then we will hit tab to go into edit mode. Now, it's basically a giant cylinder where some parts that we can rip off to, be something else. So let's just go ahead and pull off all of the parts that are going to be wood, essentially. So we will select the entire edge loop with Alt Select, and then mark seam. Now, at this point, I'm going to hit U, which will bring up our UV unwrapping menu. And you have the option to unwrap or live unwrap or smart UV project or any of these other things. I prefer to manually unwrap. Nothing really wrong with doing any of the other ones, but I prefer to manually unwrap. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because you want to turn on this live unwrap option, which will actually re-unwrap your entire object every time you make a seam that changes something. So then, now that we've unwrapped that wooden section, let's just grab a single edge loop all the way down. So just Alt and then one of the vertical edges here, and we will right click and mark seam. And what that's going to do is it's going to unwrap the entire cylinder for us, so that way when we pull off the individual pieces, we don't have to flatten them out because they're all cylinders. Okay, and then the next wooden piece is down here, so we'll just right click, mark a seam. And then we have the top of the guard. We'll mark a seam there. And then we'll mark a seam at the bottom of the guard. Even though the guard and the handle are going to be made out of metal, it will help with texturing if they are not connected when we actually get to texture them. Same is true with the pommel. It's also going to be metal, but we just want to kind of pull it apart. So we'll pull it off of there, and then we'll grab the bottom face here and just have one edge not selected around the base, and we'll mark a seam for that. And then I guess we need to do the top face as well, because I don't know if I unwrapped that top face. It doesn't look like I did. So we'll mark a seam. And if we zoom in on our UV map, we can see that our UV map is, highlighted blue. And the reason it's highlighted blue is actually that we have some stretching. So hit N to bring up the UV menu. Here, the UV property menu, and we can go into overlays, display, and then overlays, and then stretching. And we want to make sure that our stretching for area type is, as blue as possible. And that's going to mean that it's as exact to the face size and shape as possible for this. The closer you get to red, the less it's going to match its identical thing. And that can be really annoying when you're trying to get really detailed textures, simply because the faces that you're seeing over here won't be exactly the right size. So as you unwrap, you want to make sure that you are, getting close to blue with your stretching. Yes, books, I'm back. It's been a while. I took a decent bit of a break, but now we're doing the joy of 3D art. So I will be back every other weekend with a new model that we're going to create together, if you guys are so inclined, or you can just hang out during the live stream. But either way, the live stream will be me creating this, just like, kind of like Bob Ross made his paintings. But, I'm not Bob Ross, and these aren't happy little murder axes. How have you been, books? And I hope you're having a good Saturday. Okay, so our axe handle is unwrapped, but we also need to unwrap the axe head here. So unwrapping the axe head is going to be super easy. We're going to just alt select the base of the head here, which should select for us all of the edges all the way around. Right click and mark that as a seam. And now we have two objects. We have the axe head and we have the the thing that holds it to the axe handle, and then we have the head itself, which will have the blade on it. To unwrap the blade, what we're going to do is grab the top edges all the way going down the center, right click, and mark seam. Do the same thing on the bottom. And there we go. Now we do have some green in here on the axe blade, and I know I just got done talking about you want to get your stretching as blue as possible. And while that's true, some of the green on the blade is going to be fine, just because the blade is pretty much going to be one color, so it's not that big a deal. Or to be one color with a little bit of different stuff, like with a little bit of shading to it, because metal isn't just one color. Cigar, I modeled these chunks, or chunks out of the blade, just by using the knife tool. Yeah, I did not use a Boolean difference to make it. So each of these is going to be different in size and shape and angles and everything. And then we marked the edges as sharp, so that way with the smoothing we can still see the chunk pieces in the metal. All right, and then for the final step, to unwrap the head, we're just going to select these top edges right here, mark a seam, and we're good. Yeah, no problem, man. Thanks for asking. I'm glad I could help. It's funny, but you missed your live videos? Aw, Books. Thanks. I missed you too. I missed you too. I honestly, yeah, I mean, we can talk about it a little bit more in the Discord if you want, but it basically came down to me not wanting to do anything because it's cold and holidays, and I've kind of burned out on tutorials and being in the same workspace. But now these are fun, and I'm committed to every other week for sure. And doing full model tutorials, which I think will be better. So I'm glad I took a break so I could recharge for what comes next. All right, so there we go. We have the axe head unwrapped and we have the axe handle unwrapped. And let's move them onto the same texture space. You can see that the UV islands are currently overlapping with each other. That's not good. So hit A, select everything, and then U, and unwrap it. And now we can see that everything is laid out pretty well. But I'm just going to adjust this unwrap here. I want the margin to be 0.02. And it will give a little bit more space to our individual islands. Blender does a pretty good job overall. We could play around with these UV islands and try to get them, maybe better as far as like more texture on certain things. But honestly, I think this is probably fine. So with this texture done, let's go ahead and make sure we save our object. So now, the UVs are now done. So let's make sure that we save our object and save our, our file overall. And now we can actually get into texture painting. But the first step of texture painting is creating a new material. So let's go ahead and create Axe Matte for Axe Material. And then we're going to create two textures. We'll create the standard diffuse texture, which will provide the color, and then we're going to add a metallic texture as well, which will provide some reflective detail for the metal pieces of our object. So now that we have our material, we can hit Tab, and we'll select the axe head first, and just go over to the texture paint workspace, hit numpad 0, which will allow us to focus a little bit more, and then let's hit 1 to look at this from the front. Okay, now when you start out texturing, you need to add in a texture node, at least if you're doing physical or PBR textures, which I will be doing. The PBR stands for physical based rendering. So we're going to be doing some of those PBR textures. So let's just hit plus here and add a base color. Now, that's strange. I thought we just added a material here. Ah, yes. We want to make sure that the axe head is using the axe mat as well as the handle, because I only applied it to the handle here. So make sure that you have the axe head and the handle using the same material, and then we can go back to texture mode here and select the tools, and then add in the base color. And then we'll see the material name and then base color in the name of the texture slot. And that's kind of really important because if you're using Blender a lot, you're going to end up with a lot of textures, and you might make multiple versions of the same object, or you might make, multiple axes. And so having these kind of mapped out and accurately labeled will help you greatly with organization. But what we're going to do is change the width and height to be a 2K texture map. Now you can go 4K if you want, but I don't. I'm just okay using the 2K texture map. So we're just going to change this to 2048. And then change the width to 2048 as well. Now, we could choose a base color for this. I'm not going to. I'm going to just change this to a color grid because I think that'll, show us a little bit better. I usually like using the UV grids, but because, so much of this is going to be in the grayscale with metal, I don't want to accidentally miss a thing. So we'll go to the color grid and just hit OK. And now we can see that since both the axe head and the handle are sharing the material, both of them, and the texture space, both of them have the color grid texture applied to it. All right, and then select the texture slot over here, and we can see that the color map appears over on our left. Go ahead and save, and then let's take a moment now and save this image. So go over to the Texture Paint 2D area, hit Image, and Save As. And then, you know, take that minute and save the texture. You're definitely going to want to make sure that you save the texture, just so that you don't end up in a situation where Blender crashes, or you save Blender and shut it down, and then you don't have your texture anymore. I know that a lot of my students would do that, and they would lose all of their texture work. So make sure we go ahead and save it immediately, and then we'll save it periodically after we make some changes. Books, you just purchased a new PC. Can you just copy the Blender folder to your new PC? You want to keep all your settings? Yeah, probably. You can probably do that. I don't see why you wouldn't be able to. Okay, so the next thing that we want to do is choose our color palettes. And I'm going to show you how I choose my colors. In case you're not very good at choosing colors, I cheat. I'm not good at choosing colors. So I'll show you how I choose my colors, and then I've already got the colors imported in, so we don't have to worry about, me dragging all of those things in. But in case you want to choose some different colors, give me 1 second. I'll drink some water, and then I'll show you how I choose my colors. So, if you are bad at choosing colors like I am, what we want to do is go to color.adobe.com. This is a wonderful free tool that they allow you to, use, and you can either search or you can create. And so they have a bunch of different things that you can use. Like if we wanted complementary colors, you can then pick and drag, and it will create for you a palette of complementary colors. From there, you can get the hex code value and put that into the texture slot in Blender. You can also do split complementary or monochromatic or analogous. That's not how you say that, but it is what it is. And then you can also do some exploration if you want something particular. So let's say we wanted metal, right? We could go in here and type in metal, and it'll bring us up all of these different palettes, and it will also generate some palettes for us based on some colored or based on some pictures. So we can see like this Adobe metal stock photo right here has a palette of just kind of sampled colors from this metal image. We can see that's done in a couple of other places as well. But I find this to be a great resource for pulling colors. So like I said, we just click one, and then you can copy directly the hex code. Once you've got that copied, you can go back over to Blender and come down to the left-hand side here where we have our, or I guess the right-hand side where we have our color palette. Once you have the color palette in place, just right-click or select on the texture slot, go to the hex place, and paste in that hex code. Once you select out of that, it will have grabbed the color that you selected, and then to add it to a color palette, all you have to do is hit the plus button. Now I don't want this one because this is not a color that I've got. Like I said, I already have the colors that I had planned on using. So we're just going to remove this color by hitting the minus button. And there you go. If you've ever looked at how do I choose colors or you're not very good at that, color.adobe.com is the perfect way to pick your colors. Hashtag not sponsored. Okay, when you're adding hand painting textures or texturing in general, right, we're going to want to start off by doing the base color. So for the axe head, we do have a base color that we can add, and I'm going to pick something of the medium grays here. I think something like that will work for us. Now, we will end up darkening up this material, but I think this is going to be good overall. It'll help get us a nice base color for the metal. And then we're going to go in here, hit tab to go into edit mode, and we're going to select all of the edge faces. Or I guess, what we could do, which would be well, let's grab this edge and just select the center edge all the way down. Oh, And then numpad plus, or control numpad plus, gets us the entire edge, and then we can go back to texture paint. Now the reason we did that is because we have the option to prevent us from painting on anything other than what we have selected in edit mode. It's a wonderful feature, especially if you're trying to add some particular colors to only certain tiles or only certain faces. So now that we've got that, I'm going to choose kind of this this lighter gray here, and we're just going to put that in place. And so now we have, as we can see in the 2D, the blade has been sharpened, and we can accent that sharpening with the real white that I have here. And there we go. All right, so now that we've got that done, what we want to do is kind of darken up some of this metal. Now, the standard way that we would paint, with a standard brush can be changed by changing the fall off, whether you want a sharp line or linear or anything like that. But the default is smooth. So we're going to leave it as smooth, and the default stroke method is space. I think I'm okay with both of those. But metal isn't really flat. You can leave it like that, but your hand painting isn't going to look fantastic. Unless you have a shader, because Breath of the Wild's axes don't really have anything other than this flat color there, which kind of surprised me when I noticed that. But nevertheless, let's go ahead and darken this. So what we're going to do is we're going to take slightly darker here, and we're going to change the blend from mix to darken. And just zoom in, and then so that we don't have to paint on both sides, we want to come down on the right hand side and change our texturing symmetry to mirror the y-axis. That is going to just allow us to paint on one side and have it mirrored to the other. All right, and then I'm going to drop the strength down to probably about 0.5. Bring this up a little bit, and you can see that I'm just going to start adding in these lines here, and I want to try, I can add them in going up or down, but I do want to make sure that they're kind of straight. I don't want them to be curved, because metal does not really have curves in the, I guess the cellular structure. They're very straight lined when you look at anything. Even if it's been forged, you can kind of see that it's very, very straight lined. And we can just go back here. Which will kind of turn off that lighting effect that we have going on. Zoom out, and this is kind of what our axe is looking like. That's fine. So we're going to darken, and then after we have darkened everything, we'll come in with some highlighting and lighten it all up. And because the axe head is mirrored on the the x-axis, we only have to worry about painting half of this, which makes it great. So use your modifiers when you are modeling, guys. It really, really helps. I'm just kind of lightly adding in these lines here. I don't want things to go too crazy. But this is, like I said, this is just going to give our metal some texture overall, which will make it look better than just that flat color. Books, yes, I do have a video on hair that you can check out. It is number 8, I believe, in the character course. Something like that. MCCM, welcome to the stream. It's been a while. How are you doing? Okay, I think this is looking good. So what we want to do now is we want to grab the darkest color on the palette and just kind of lightly go over some of this as well. But instead of having it be the same smooth stroke, I'm going to change the fall off to sharp, which will allow us to kind of just get some tighter lines here for the darkness. And I'm not going to go over the entire thing. I'm just going to kind of go over some areas. I'm going to go a little heavier here because it will be a little darker towards the base of the handle, or base of the blade. And that's fine. And we'll do a little bit in the crease there as well. And then we're going to hit the bottom. We're going to hit the bottom with this. And I'm just going to smooth this out a little bit, because I think that some of these dark clumps have, like, gone a little too dark. So just kind of blend these colors in, no worries. Or maybe we come back in with some of that base and just lighten up some areas. Just come in with that base and just retouch up to get that nice base color back. And really there's, you know, hand painting is more to where you're comfortable with it. So if you're not comfortable with it, keep touching it up. And zooming out to look at it and see how it looks. And thankfully, like I said, because we're symmetrizing on the y-axis as well with our paint, I think that's going to be fine. I'm okay with that. I don't think it needs a ton, but we do need some color up here at the top. So let's come in here once again with the medium dark and kind of darken this up. All right, we're just doing a little touch-up work there around the blade. There we go. Gotta do the same thing on the bottom here, simply because this back part isn't sharpened, and so having the color like that doesn't really make a ton of sense. Oh, that's darken. Just lighten. I'm gonna fill over this area. Cool. Okay, so we can definitely tell that it's an axe head, we can see that it's metal, and we can see that there has been some of that metal that's been shaved away in the form of, our cutting edge. But we want to just kind of blend out this cutting edge here. So we're going to take this color and make sure the fall off is still set to sharp. And we're going to drop down the radius of our cutting edge here and just kind of take this along. I'm going to, have it as lighten. I'm going to take it along the edge between the standard metal and the sharpened metal. And it doesn't matter if you go too far, on either side. Because no sharpening is ever absolutely perfect. But we're just trying to get rid of this weird overlap here. We want it to be more consistent. Because you can see that in the texture, there's this weird blockiness. So we're just going to blend these colors together, and then we'll lighten up the color and do some highlighting on the textures with our white. And if you want to go over, like I said, in a couple of different places, you feel like you need to go over the sharpened line, that is more than okay. Oscar, welcome to the stream. How you doing today? All right, cool. So that cutting edge has been kind of fixed. And the sharpening looks more like it's been sharpened rather than the texture was just kind of stuck to only those faces like we did. Okay, so that's good. Now, before we can highlight this, we need to finish doing the darkened areas. So what we need to worry about is this chip on the inside here. So we're going to go to the chips. We're going to grab the darkest color on our metal color palette here. And what we want to do is just... we want to go to darken. And we don't want to go all the way to the edge. But somewhere close to the edge, and then all the way to there. And we can increase the size of our brush because this doesn't really quite matter too much. Let's go in here, numpad plus to refocus, or numpad period to refocus. And we're going to fill in this area here. It's amazing what this effect, you might not even notice it because it's going to be a really small detail, but it's crazy how much this adds to the realism of these chipped out pieces. Okay, and then because we have black as the second color tile, if you are, if you're using two color tiles, you can access the second one by holding Control. So we're going to hold Control here and just put black in the very, very center. It's going to make it really quite nice. And kind of blend those two together. There we go. Now it's blended, and then we can take that medium dark here and kind of take this out a little bit further. Do the same thing on this side. I'm crossing the line there. We don't want to cross the line. Okay. And we'll zoom out, and you know, you really won't see it, but once we add the highlight there, the distinction will be really, really nice. So let's go ahead and do the next chip. I'm going to do the exact same thing to that next chip here. So dark is dark. And then final black touch up in the center. Cross that line. We don't want to make sure, we want to make sure we're not crossing that line in the texture space. It's okay if we go a little crazy towards the edges because we're going to highlight, so we'll just fix that with the highlighter. All right, shading is pretty much done. So now we need to come in with the highlighting. And so we're going to grab the whitest white that we've got here, and I'm going to drop the radius down to, I don't know, 7. And then we're going to go along kind of all of the sharp parts of our blade. That's where we're going to go along and highlight. So all of the sharpened parts, the edges of the metal, that's where we're getting into highlight. Okay. Oh, and we want to be on the lighten here. And let's just go ahead and increase our strength so we don't have to go over it as many times. All right, and we can see that that highlighting is already starting to define those sections for us. Even if we did mark it as sharp, I do think the highlighting adds some extra oomph to the texture. So then, like I said, we'll just continue adding to the sharp parts. If we can get down in here. And then we're going to go along the blade and just make sure that we've got a nice sharp cutting edge here. It's okay if some of that color doesn't go quite to the end. There we go. Eddie Murphy, welcome to the stream. How are you doing? I'm doing all right, man. I'm doing all right. Okay, now we both know, because we were looking at, or I guess we all know if we were watching the modeling part, that there's an edge here. But because it's not supposed to be, you know, its own chunk to the blade, we're just going to ignore it as far as the texturing for the highlighting is concerned. And then, you know, we'll pretend as if it's its own thing. Or it's all one piece, I guess is what I was trying to say. So you're recently getting into all of this Blender stuff? You're going back and watching all the tutorials and stuff to learn? Well, great. I'm glad you're here, man. Enjoy the tutorials. I've got more than a few on my channel. And also, we're just starting this Joy of 3D Art, where every 2 weeks we'll be coming together and making some type of model, whether it's sculpting or 3D modeling, and then we'll be doing the whole process for whatever object we'll be creating that day. So if you have any questions or if you have any ideas for what you'd like to see made on the channel, put it down in the comments below. And I'll see if I can schedule an episode of the Joy of 3D Art for that. Yeah, and in fact, Eddie, with this live stream, if you like, I know you're just joining now, but if you go back and watch from the beginning, once it's done, you can actually, I've explained the entire process throughout all of these. And so my hope is that whoever is here in the live stream or whoever finds these afterwards would be able to follow along exactly and get basically the same result that I did during the stream. Okay, so now if we take a look at the nice highlights, we can see that it does add in some actual very nice configurations for us. Let's do an overlay. Let's try an overlay. See what that does for us. It is gonna, yeah, brighten that up for us, which is nice. That's what I want. Because I don't think, oh yeah, there we go. The highlighting was really good over on the edge, but it did not do so great on the cutting edge. I guess the sharpening edge versus the cutting edge. So we've just changed over to the overlay. I'm going to real quick go over this all again to really add in You're getting Bob Ross vibes from the stream? Yeah, that's kind of what I was going for. I just wanted this stream to be kind of like just a place where people can come early on a Saturday morning, kind of chill out, start their day or end their day depending on their time zone, and create some 3D models in a non-stress environment. So I'm not trying to directly emulate Bob Ross, but I do kind of want to emulate that energy that he had. That is not what I wanted to do. Wow, that highlighting is a lot better. But because the drastic color difference between the highlighting and the edge of the blade, we're going to go over real quick and go back to lighten, and we'll just change the fall off to kind of smooth, and we'll zoom in here, and then we're just going to kind of lighten up this area, take it in and make sure let's undo that. And then let's lower that strength down to about 0.5. And kind of do what we did with the darkening for the lightning, because we want the blade to have some of the color of the base, but we also want it to be a little bit brighter so that the highlighting isn't so different. It's still defined, but it's not super different. You know what I mean? Yeah, and these look a lot better than the top ones, don't they? So I think that's going to pay off for us. All right, there we go. There we go. Now, we just need to do some highlighting on the rest of it. So let's jump back to the overlay for that and come up to the top here, and we're just going to overlay all these corners here. So, however, I'm going to lower the radius down to about 3 pixels maybe. And then we're going to go over these. Nice and overlaid to give the feeling of sharpness. Because metal corners tend to be brighter, especially when you're hand painting. Exterior, like the tip for hand painting is exterior corners should be brighter and interior corners should be darker. We'll have to get rid of some of that, touch it up. That's okay. However, we also could come in here. We could come in here and then we're gonna just smear this up. Nuhan, welcome to the stream. What are we making? We're making what was on the thumbnail, the axe. Currently we're in the hand painting stages, but if you want to go back and follow along, you can follow along with the entire thing and make the axe with us. Ah, you're on a school computer. Okay. Well, the stream will be up, so if you want to follow along later, you absolutely can. Alright, just do the exact same thing on the bottom here. But I think what we learned from doing the top was that we should just do this on the bottom. And real quick overlay. But unfortunately, doing it this way does not take advantage of the symmetry option. So we'll have to do both sides. But it is going to be cleaner, so I think the trade-off is worth it. right, there we go. We've got some highlighting done. We're just going to finish up this highlighting up here. And this will be a little bit easier to highlight because it's not directly, like it's not a super, super sharp corner. Okay. All right, cool. The axe head is basically finished. I'm good with this texturing. We're just going to kind of smear out some of those mistakes there. There we go. All right, and the axe head is done, in my opinion. So we'll go ahead and save the work, but also make sure that you come over here and save your image, because saving your Blender file does not save your image texture. So we'll go ahead and save the image texture, and now our axe head is finished. To move on, we're just going to go back to the handle here, jump into texture paint, and apply some base colors. So once again, jump to the fill brush, and you know what? We can go ahead and just fill kind of everything in with this base metal color. There we go. And then we'll just select and fill in the wood colors that we need. So we'll go once again, grab the wood, and hit Control L, and then because they've got seams on them and we're in the texture space workspace, it'll stop at the seams, so we don't have to worry about it selecting all of the other things here. Then back to texture paint mode, turn on the selective fill, and make sure that you have a wood palette with some wooden colors here. Then we're gonna pick maybe that as the base. All right, and so now we have kind of our base colors laid out. And turn that off. And I think we'll start with the wood, because the wood is a little bit easier to paint. I mean, the metal at this point is really just highlighting. There's not going to be a ton of detail on the pommel because you're not going to see it, or the guard, or really these additional metal pieces. We'll just do some highlighting, maybe some darkening, to kind of blend the colors to make it look a little bit more like the axe head, but pretty much we've already seen that. So I don't want to take up more time doing the metal. We'll do the wood. So with the wood, we're going to do kind of this in 2 stages. So stage 1 is kind of blending the wood colors together so that you get this kind of like normal like flow of the wood color is kind of what I'm thinking. So we'll change the fall off back to smooth. Which is nice. And then we want to choose just one of the colors from our wood palette. Now this medium red or brown is the base color, so we want to go with a little bit of the darker colors first. And we'll just bring up our brush, set the strength a little lower, 0.3-ish, and then we just kind of want to cover. some areas. We don't want to cover the whole thing, just enough to like, okay, you can see that there's some color direction here. If we turn on the render mode, not sure why it's freaking out about, there we go. Okay, it's just doing something weird, but now it's good. And so if we zoom in, we can kind of see like there's the difference in color sections, and if we, you know, that's basically pretty light, but we'll do that, that's fine. Kind of maybe do a little bit of a darker area. It's okay. And our painting is still symmetrical on that y-axis, so we don't have to worry about doing the back. We just need to make sure that the sides are covered. All right, and now that we've done that, we can go in with some lighter colors here. So, you know, in these little lighter areas that we have, we want to just touch those up. Maybe get us, and this will help get us like a nice brighter wood transition, which will mean that the color won't look flat when we add in some of the, you know, the creases in the wood. All right, and I know we were still in overlay, but if you also want to go back then and just kind of touch some of this up with the original color in the mix mode, it'll help kind of blend these colors a little bit more. And there we go. I think that's a pretty solid, you know, normal wood transition. Kind of see those colors in there. Get a little bright patch, but then you also have some darker patches. So I think we're good. Okay. So now let's add in some of the wood grain. To do that, we're going to make some lines with the darker grays, and then just like with the axe head where we did the dark first and then highlighted, we're then going to highlight those lines. So we're going to grab the slightly dark red here, and then we want to change the fall off to sharper. And I'm actually going to turn on the radius based on pressure sensitivity, which is a really nice tool if you're using a pen tablet, because you don't have to worry about, you know, the actual like brush head. It allows you to lightly press, which will create very fine lines for you. And just to show you, you can kind of see how that line gets created. And then, you know, wood has very straight lines, so we'll just kind of create some straight lines here. Going over areas lightly. Create some branching in your wood if you want to. And if you want tighter lines, just decrease your radius. It'll allow your, you know, the ability of your pen to be pressed a little bit harder without having to increase the line too much. Now these lines are a little hard to see, so go over them a couple of times and then we'll kind of retrace them with the darker black, but you don't, or the darker red. You just don't want to start with the really dark red when you're creating these details in case you want to ignore some lines and enhance others. You can kind of do that if they blend into the texture, but it's really hard to do that if you go real dark real quick. All right, and we have some lines in here. That's good. And if you see any patterns like emerging from the different color regions, go ahead, add some lines and character into your wood. There's really, not a wrong way to paint wood. It's just lines on whatever you're working on. And you can try to get too detailed, so that's something you want to avoid. You don't want to get too detailed on it, but just having some basic lines, you're fine. All right, so now that we've kind of got some lines in here, let's kind of choose some lines to be a little darker. All right, so we've got some nice little lines in here, and now we're gonna go in and highlight them, and then we'll create some lighter lines in here to kind of change up the consistency of our piece. So we're gonna go in with some lighter lines, and we just want to kind of trace along the outside of some of these darker lines. Just pick one side to go along. It'll help give the illusion of like those are cut in. You can kind of see now that that looks like it's a deeper. Uh-oh, what happened here? Oh well, not sure quite what's going on with my controls here, so no biggie. Can't rotate. Weird. But you guys can see that, you know, or at least you saw that adding just like some of the lighter color as lines around some of the darker areas makes it seem like that gets cut in a little bit, like the wood is above. Huh. Just increase the strength of the brush here. All right, and we've almost got everything highlighted out, but we will enhance the highlighting on some of these. Like this one, we'll switch to the lightest wood color we have and get in here. And really highlight one side of this. And from a distance, that looks really, really good. And then when you get up close, you're like, oh, it's just texture, but... Switch to overlay here. All right, and I think that's good. Maybe just a little bit more up here. Cool. All right, now for the top, we will just put in a little bit of lighter color here. Yeah, let's go ahead and increase the strength here, I think. And actually, let's change this to a dot or a drag dot. Get rid of that. And just kind of make our radius most of the size here. Oh, and change it. We got to change the fall off to constant. And there we go. All right, and that gets us a nice little, like a top cap for like an exterior and then an interior, I guess. And then change the fall off to kind of a root. I think this will be the best one. And we'll just do a very, very basic swirl. So something like, oh, change that stroke back to space. Let's enlighten. There we go. Let's mix that. Oh. We want to turn off the symmetry. do something like that. But maybe let's do a little bit thinner. I mean, realistically, who's going to see the top of this thing, you know, or focus on the top, but okay, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that swirl. Stormy weather, hi, welcome to the stream. How are you doing? Let's go ahead and save. And now that our wood is done, let's also make sure that we save our image. And if we switch to material preview, we're pretty good. Obviously, we need some highlighting on the metal, on the, you know, the bottom and the top. We will do those, but let's actually add in that second texture for this object here, and we will add in, it'll be the metallic texture. So let's go back to the axe head here, and we'll add in a new node, and we'll choose metallic. The same 2048, 2048, and then for this we just want blank, because metallic maps are grayscale, meaning they're black to white. And so if we did a color map, we would have to fill everything back in. So we'll just do a generated type of blank, and then select that color node. Yeah, for whatever reason that's not working. We'll go to the palette, and we have a grayscale by default, which is really, really nice. So we'll click here, and we can see that basically everything is black, but we just want this whole thing to reflect light a little bit. So we can turn that on, go to the kind of a medium gray here, and fill that in as a medium gray. And now if we, you know, go here, we can kind of see that it is reflecting a little bit, but it's not reflecting a ton. But if we then, you know, make the sharpened blade a brighter color, so we grab a closer to white and we go there. Well, then we can see that, you know, this is the color change. If we go here, we can see that it is definitely more reflective on that sharpened edge than it is on the, you know, solid base there. And then all we'd have to do is kind of blend those colors together. So back here, and then let's blend, and we can kind of, you know, choose something halfway between the two. Make sure symmetry is back on so we don't have to do both sides of this. And just kind of come in here and lighten up. We don't want to mix, we want to lighten. That'll make sure that the sharpening, you know, shininess extends past just the sharpened blade a little bit into the other things. But then we also need to darken up some of this crevice because obviously it's broken. It should not reflect light as nicely as the standard sharpened edge. So let's just get in here real quick and kind of darken up this area to not reflect as much light. Okay. And that should be good. We could also then add some reflectiveness, a little bit more reflectiveness to these kind of shaved off edges. We don't want it to be too shiny, so we don't want it to be too, like, white or white on the white scale, but a good mix of this should be fine. Yeah. Cool. All right, and we want to make sure that we also save the metallic map now, and then we can go back to the other object. And let's go into edit mode here and just select all of the metal stuff. How old am I? I'm in my mid-20s. So select all of those metal pieces here, and then we'll choose the color from the, kind of a medium gray again. And just fill that in as a medium gray. And there we go. Cool. And now our wood pieces are still black, so they won't reflect light at all. And then our metal pieces will be a little bit reflective, which will be nice. So we go ahead, save our work, save our metallic texture, select the base color here, and check out what this looks like. So with some specular lighting, we can see that the blade is kind of shiny and that these edges are also kind of shiny. We can see that the metal guard is reflecting some light, but also, while there is some reflection on the, oh, that's not good. Let's not fill that in. While there is some reflection on the, wood itself, it's definitely not as shiny or reflective as the other metal pieces. So I think that overall, job well done. Okay, and the final pieces are some highlighting on this metal base here. So let's get into that highlighting. We'll just go with the lighter color here. Drop this down. Go to sharp and change. Yeah, the lighten is fine. Is the symmetry still on? Yes, it is. Perfect. And if you want, you can definitely export these texture. I mean, like once you save the textures, they're already exported. So you can definitely pull these into like Photoshop or Affinity or something like that and brush up these textures and fix them up the way you want them to be fixed. This way you get to see what it's actually going to look like and paint it directly onto your model. Oh, that's not a good... All right, and then because we have an intersection here, we're just going to darken this up, or we have the inner corner. So you want to darken inner corners, lighten exterior corners. Cool. And now just for the bottom, and then we're done. All right, cool. Now just a little bit of lightning. forgot about this real quick. We'll just... All right. There we go. So, what we intended to create on the left, what we created on the right. Guys, this has been a wonderful first episode of The Joy of 3D Art, and I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I have, and you enjoyed the format. If you have any ideas for what you'd like to see a future Joy of Art, episode, if what you would want me to create in that episode, let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out. Make sure you save your work and your textures, and I'll see you next time.